Welcome to the Blazing Black Bolshevik podcast. I know, I switched accents 3 times in one sentence. Why? Ask God. But this is episode 4.1. We're talking about, reintroducing the topic of anti-blackness and its prevalence in our society. It's a worldwide phenomenon. I don't single out any religion or any group of people for it because it's one practice by even people who suffer under it. It has a way of sneaking up on people and people that you even respect and admire harbor anti-black attitudes. Being anti-black and being colorist are two separate yet equal things. It's a danger to our children, it's a danger to society, and it's a danger to our ways of life. Many people who exist today are not racist as you would define racist 100 years ago, but they often, 9 times out of 10, you ask your parent or grandparent how they feel about black people, and you will hear like 100 different things. Lazy, common one. Uninspired, common one. Thieves, common one. Violent, common one. Aggressive, common one. And they attribute negative qualities instead of positive qualities to us. They take every bad example and see that as the average. Many racists and colorists know that they are wrong. However, they do, they get some benefit out of the oppression of black people. I remember a rich Republican once saying, I voted for Trump for one reason and one reason only, because he wasn't going to tax us. That's never mind the fascism, never mind the conservative populism, never mind the wars he started, never mind the embezzlement, never mind all of that. But because he would not tax certain privileges and would be economically beneficial towards him, he would vote for this man who harbors all of these evil ideals. And that, do not take that as an endorsement for the DNC, because I will be the first one to tell you that Hillary Clinton called us super freaks or super predators. Constantly demonizes black men, but even just tries to cater to us. You want to know how she tried to cater to us during the 2016 election? She's I carry a bottle of hot sauce in my purse and I take it everywhere with me. You think that lady uses hot sauce? You think she carries a bottle of hot sauce? This millionaire, millions of dollars. She carries a bottle of hot sauce wherever she goes. No. You know who Joe Biden is? Our current president? He himself did what? Was a segregationist. Even recently, like he said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. You can say that he messed up or had a sentence, error, but we all know that's how they really think and how they really feel about black people at the end of the day. Even the Liberal Party of Canada, I'm trying to think of that man's name, the President of Canada or the Prime Minister of Canada, he was in blackface. And this was years back, yes, but it recently, within the last 3 years, has it came to light kept his position, kept everything. He issued an apology, but that did not erase the damage of what he did. Um, the things like this are common across the United States. It's common across the world. Anywhere where you have a majority population, um, which is non-melanated, and this happens in, like I said, it happens in black states. But when you have people who have been taught since the day that they were born that they are superior and that immigrants or black and brown people are a threat, then you will get a society that thrives on anti-blackness. Take South Korea for an example. Black people have plenty of stories of going to South Korea or Japan, seeing skin whitening creams on TV. It'll start off with even their commercials. Like, this soap is so strong, it'll have a black person on TV, and then they start washing them. Use this, and then show an Asian man at the end. If you use our wash, you will turn from dirty to clean. Like, black skin is something to be, washed away. Cultural insensitivity as well, for sure. But you cannot lie that this is not a direct pattern of abuse and oppression. You know what I mean? Even China, a state which I predominantly support, against imperialist attack, they even suffer from anti-black ideas. Recently, like on one of their main shows, they had this Chinese lady dress up as a black woman, and I'm just like, so in a country of 1.4 billion, you cannot at all, just not at all, find one black woman to play in a play. I find that telling, of the ideas. Not saying everybody holds that idea, but I just find that telling that, they do that instead of just finding a black actress. It's stuff like that which seek, when white people ask us, well, what is racism? Why do, we can't have a true racial equality across the world unless the history of black people are taught in full. We are taught a whitewashed and individualized scale of history. And when I say that, we often focus on the individuals. We focus on Hitler instead of Germany and the imperial system of Western Europe. We focus on MLK instead of the civil rights movement and racism in America. We focus on Christopher Columbus, but we don't focus on the entire genocide of Native Americans and Britain and Spain's colonization efforts. We focus on individuals, and we also, and it's through a white lens. How often do you hear a black historian tell history? How often are the history books in your class written by black people? Like, black people, the saying, history is written by the victors. Well, if white people have been winning for the last several hundred years, that means we only have the history of white people. And like I said, this is not true for every country. However, this is true for America, which is where I reside. And you have to keep in focus when you're talking about America. You have to talk about the systematic erasure of black people and black success. Anti-blackness is something that cuts deep into America. If you look, it still happens to this day, but look at how many black towns were destroyed. It's, you can't really find comparable events to this, because this is deliberate, like a deliberate attack on black people. You have our towns destroyed. You have people in modern day, like there are people who live today who are slaves, and you're just like, oh wait, we entered slavery in the 1800s. No slavery. No, we have people alive that even when they were emancipated, they probably got paid 2 pennies per day. And I don't want to hear that, but inflation, that would have been enough. No, it wasn't. And even then, there was recently a man who beat and abused the older black man who had developmental disabilities, and could not work. I mean, who didn't have any self agency, couldn't really talk properly, and that business owner got arrested. But it still remains to the fact that the system perpetuates anti-black ideals. This is especially clear when you have sitting governors, sitting state officials say how critical race theory is a threat. Critical race theory, anything good is compared to communism. Communist this, communist that, communist this. Critical race theory is now communism in the minds of the GOP and the far right. It is communism. Why? Because it's correct. Critical race theory, I don't know why they chose that name, but it's really not a theory. It's just a fact that because of slavery, because of Jim Crow, because of redlining, because of the other thousands of laws and events that happen to us, we are unequal in American society. Critical race theory analyzes this and shows us why things are the way they are in our society. And you'll find they are so scared of critical race theory being taught in their schools. I don't want my child to feel guilty about things that happened in the past. Why would your child have guilt and then you're trying to say it will traumatize them? I think what's more traumatizing is a black child growing up and having to be taught by their parents why they can't play outside with their friends in the same way that a white child does. Because we know a white child will never be shot for holding a toy gun. I don't need anybody in the comments, oh, but this one time, no. Not on the same scale. Not on the same scale at all. There was a kid who was shot. The whole fight, it's hot. I think it was over 90 degrees. Hot. One of them had a Nerf gun, one of the new ones that shoot water pellets. So they had one of those. Looks nothing, absolutely nothing like a real gun. And he got shot. And then it's an excuse, because there is no pretext under which an officer should fear for his life, even with a gun that is not aimed towards them. And if a police officer shoots a man for just if the idea that a person has a gun is a threat that they would fear for their life, that means that guns are not legal in America. And I know people will die and cry for their Second Amendment rights. So every time you support a cop who shoots an unarmed kid in the back, or shoots a black kid, you're indirectly saying that, and you support and agree with that, then you're indirectly and more than likely directly supporting white supremacy and the idea that that like here's how racism backfires on them. Remember Ronald Reagan, the demon, the person I hate the most, the Satan incarnate. Ronald Reagan had made some of the first gun laws in California. You could open carry in California before Ronald Reagan came around. And the only reason he did that was, surprise, surprise, black people started carrying guns. And you know that that's something conservatives and liberals, white conservatives and white liberals, can get behind. They ate it up. Oh, those blackies, those darkies are going to destroy the moral fabric of America. And if we do not ban open carry, then they will massacre us all. There is never any threat of that happening from the Black Panthers. And in fact, the Black Panthers were predominantly peaceful, trying to grow gardens, trying to clothe the poor, and trying to feed the hungry. And defend their communities, because pigs would come and burn everything down and shoot innocent civilians. Now that you have that somewhat backstory of the American justice system, legal system, I will tell you about the somewhat levels of, racism. And I kind of think that it ties into the levels of fascism within the country, because they're somewhat intertwined. It's it, and really, I should say that America has always been somewhat fascist in a sense, simply because Germany based its ideals on, they learned from America. In Italy, with Mussolini, he somewhat synthesized a national form of racism. He initially did not need this, but fascism requires an other in order to beat down on. Otherwise, the people, the proletariat, the poor, the lumpen proletariat, however you want to consider us, as an organized group, will start to develop a consciousness, and they'll start to say, well, we're all poor. You're black, I'm white, but we're both poor. And then they'll look up and see these rich people in sky castles, and then be like, wait, why aren't we burning down the people in the sky castles while they're eating and getting fat, and we're over here poor and skinny and unhealthy? That is what fascism requires. They need us to see each other as different, radically different, and even detrimental to the society. You primarily hear this with Mexicans in America. They're one of the new others, and Arabs and blacks, with Trump's go back to your shithole country. It is quite evident that that these people want us to see each other as our enemies. I just pulled up Twines of Fascism. You have powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, identification of enemies as a unifying cause. That's the one I was just talking about. Supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security. I also talked about this one. Religion and government intertwined, corporate power protected, labor power suppressed, disdain for intellectuals in the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, and fraudulent elections. Now, if you look at those signs, and point them out. Tell me how many of those does America qualify for? Quite a few. Quite a few. They trample over the human rights of black people predominantly. You know, Mexico, like I said, we're all getting the short end of the stick. But as a black man where many people do not talk about the black issue, I feel the need to focus on us, and I will diverge from that as I see fit. But for right now, we're focusing on darker skinned people and darker skinned individuals because we are the ones who get the short end of the stick all across the world. So with fascism, the I really consider this the ideology which rules America. You have neoliberalism, of course, yes, but fascism is it sneaks up on you and creeps up on you. You can see that in January 6th. Um, and it's kind of reminiscent of Nazi Germany in that sense because you had Hitler and his beer hall push, and all of the leaders were arrested. Then all of them. Only when there was like 32 members. I forget how many members they actually had, but they had a good amount of members, and they failed, and they thought it the end of the organized Nazi Party. And we all know how that turned out. So you have a galvanized far right, a galvanized white supremacist ideology, and plenty of militia groups. They have stated that they are like hostile towards black people, and it is evident in the way that they act. It is telling how they also incorporate other minorities, into their anti-blackness, and even will include black people in their anti-blackness. They will convince a black person that the unified black masses are going down the wrong path. We have a term in the black community for these race traders, and I don't use that term lightly. An Uncle Tom. What is an Uncle Tom? A person who would sell out a slave to the master, which is white. And this is an act so vile that almost every black person within America knows the term Uncle Tom, even without reading the book Uncle Tom's Cabin. And that is powerful in its own way. That when you think about it, most cultures have certain words that everybody just knows, whether they were taught at a young age or at an older age. It's just something that is cultural. So for us to have a term for a race trader that has been passed down from slavery shows you how intertwined white supremacy has been with the black experience. It's, racists will claim that black people don't want to do anything, that we want to just live in a drug infested and vile community. But they will never sit there and think, how did the drugs get there? If most of us were slaves, how did the slaves learn how to create crack, cocaine, and heroin? If we were poor, then how did we get the material for millions of tons of it? You know what I mean? These are things, fascism and racism require somewhat, and I don't want to say idiocy, because there are plenty of smart doctors, lawyers, educators who are racist. So I don't want to say it is. It requires a lack of empathy. You cannot love your fellow. You have to have a lack of love in your heart to become a fascist. You have to like literally cut off a portion of your heart. And I think ex-racists and ex-fascists and other anti-racists will, agree with me when they say that, like, after abandoning racism, that they feel more whole. Like, if you ever talk to a racist, they are very angry people. Just even outside of the racism. Um, you know, with kids, you can tell when they hop on the game. Oh, you will never survive in a Call of Duty lobby. What do you mean by that? You mean you're saying slurs? Is that funny? Like that alt right pipeline. Um, they fall down this alt right pipeline, and you're like, how do they fall down this pipeline? Say somebody's fighting at home and the kid needs an escape. They will go onto the internet, and anything that can make them laugh or feel alive again or feel like everything is okay again will ultimately contribute to their decline into the far right. Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, um, Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle. You have all Alex Jones. You have all of these, and I said Dave Chappelle for one reason and one reason only, because he often aligns himself with far right ideals, even though he would be a victim of the far right. He is what one would consider Uncle Tom. Now, moving back to the far right pipeline, you have these pseudo intellectuals pushing an ideology of hatred, and they try to talk about young men, and they, because they are nationally syndicated. These guys make millions and get on TV, and they try not to come off as point and blank racist, but they take the mask off quite clearly several times. If you hear them talking about the white replacement theory, if you hear them talking about the moral fabric of America, if you hear them talking about degeneracy, and they try to put it through a Christian nationalist lens, but it often comes off as what it really is, which is racist and racism. Now you have an organized and powerful and galvanized far right, which is willing to listen to these pseudo intellectuals, and all they need is from, like, as you can see from January 6th, all they need is one big old push. If all of these leaders, if all of these intellectuals start talking, if they said right now we are in danger, the white race is in danger, and we need you to take over your city parliament or take over your government, then there will be war in these streets right now. If Elon Musk as well, which is, like I said, the business fascism caters to the rich. You know what I mean? It's a tool of the rich to stay in power. So this man, his fans hinge on every word he says. They are attracted by what they perceive as his intelligence, but really it's his wealth, and it shows you that they project a lot, and I believe they have to project. They say that the left wing is, we only talk in echo chambers. But if you actually know left wingers, we argue. Maoists argue with Marxist Leninists. Marxist Leninists argue with anarchists. Anarchists argue with socialists. Socialists argue with social democrats. It's one big left wing fight, and versus the far right. Basically, they go like, "Hey, are you racist? Yeah, I'm racist. I'm racist. Oh, are you racist? Yeah, I'm racist. I'm racist. Okay, we can be friends. Doesn't matter what particular ideology is. You could be libertarian. You could be a paleo conservative. You could be a neoconservative. You could, you could be an outright fascist. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as you're racist, and as long as you believe that there is a moral failing in America and that Christianity is under attack, that, well, let me rephrase, white Christianity is under attack, then, oh, and masculinity, don't forget that one, and I will go into that one on another episode. Hypermasculinity and its role in racism and sexism. But yeah, that sums up my thoughts on racism and colorism. There may be more entries in this series as I find more topics on it to talk about. But for today, have a nice one. Much love, and make sure to share, like, and subscribe.